Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Gostola. I'm the managing editor for Shadowproof, also the curator of the Dissenter newsletter, and welcome to this video. If you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button. You'll get alerts for videos when they are posted. You probably know the drill. I'm here to discuss and react to the video of former U.S. National Security Advisor. He was an advisor in the Trump administration. I'm here to react to him proudly speaking about how he was a coup plotter. That John Bolton was a coup plotter, is a coup plotter, knows a lot about coups, knows about coup d'etat, as he says, and he has a judgment about Donald Trump's coups. But you have to see this to believe that this is a real media clip in the United States. This happened on a cable news network in the US.
Not heed the advice and keep shopping around until you end up with this group of misfits with like Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell. Is he just not capable of hearing no?
Well, when it comes to his personal advantage, the answer is he doesn't listen to anybody else. But I think it's also important to understand, while nothing Donald Trump did after the election in connection with the lie about the election fraud, none of it is defensible. None of it is defensible. It's also a mistake, as some people have said, including on the committee, the commentators, that somehow this was a carefully planned coup d'etat aimed at the Constitution. That's not the way Donald Trump does things. It's rambling from one half-vast idea to another, one plan that falls through and another comes up. That's what he was doing. As I say, none of it defensible. But you have to understand the nature of what the problem of Donald Trump is. He's, to use a Star Wars metaphor, a disturbance in the force. And it's not an attack on our democracy. It's Donald Trump looking out for Donald Trump. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence.
I don't know that I agree with you. To be fair, with all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work, and that's not what he did. It was just stumbling around from one idea to another. Ultimately, he did unleash the rioters at the Capitol. As to that, there's no doubt. But not to overthrow the Constitution, to buy more time to throw the matter back to the states to try and redo the issue. And if you don't believe that, you're going to overreact.
A whole lot to unpack there. First you have him saying half-vast. I think he means half-assed, but he's slurring the word, or maybe he thinks it's half-vast. I don't know how he would write that. Maybe he's trying not to say ass on cable news TV. Who knows? Then we get the worst Star Wars reference possible. He says there's a disturbance in the force and says that he's using a metaphor. I don't know what he's doing. These conservatives are obsessed with Star Wars, even though it implicates them. I mean, they're always the empire. They always have been the empire, and they probably always will be the empire. But if you were going to make a reference, I think he would have come up with something else. Maybe referred to Donald Trump as Jabba the Hutt. Suggesting that maybe Jabba the Hutt wouldn't ever be able to successfully take over a planet in a coup. I don't know. I'm just saying I don't like the reference. It's pretty hokey. And then you get the juicy quote about planning coup d'etats, and not here, but saying and claiming that it takes a lot of work. And because Donald Trump is lazy and not going to engage in work, then we shouldn't believe that he was out to mount a coup in the U.S. He has to say the whole thing whenever he says it's a coup d'etat. And I guess that makes him sound more professorial when it comes to it. I don't know if we're supposed to treat him as more of an authority. He does a lot to his physicality to make us believe that he is an authority, when in fact it's really difficult to take John Bolton seriously. He'll grab his glasses with his hands and adjust them so that he can give off this air of being a wise human being. But of course, um, I don't think he is that. I'm not sure if he really is a human being. I think that that's up for debate, up for a whole lot of debate, especially when this is the point that he's choosing to make on TV. And then you see Jake Tapper in his role as the anchor on CNN basically let this slide by and not really address it right away. I don't think he knows how to process it. He's not used to having to talk about what the United States truly does with its superpower and how it has agencies that are committed to destabilizing and meddling in governments around the world in order for us to pursue and advance our own agenda, then it's not true. It's actually a pretty big lie that he has never been involved in any coup d'etats in the United States. Here's one. I'll put this on the screen fully. In 2000, with the Florida recount, he came into a public library and he said, "I'm with the Bush Cheney team and I'm here to stop the count." He was stopped the count before any of the MAGA people, any of the people supporting Donald Trump were shouting and chanting, "Stop the count." He's the original uh, gangster, so to speak, of stop the count. He's the person who had come up with this and created a model that I'm sure Donald Trump and his team imagined they could replicate, but they weren't able to do it. They didn't have the sophistication of Karl Rove and others who were involved, their enterprise and its success. And so we got a very dollar store version of that. In Florida, he came in, John Bolton, and he helped to ensure that voters were disenfranchised and that people's votes were not tabulated. And that ensured that President George W. Bush became the leader of the United States. But we don't talk about that. And we only talk about Donald Trump as the starting point for when democracy died. We don't talk about the last 20 years and how there has been a death and a sickness within our democracy, within the republic for 2 decades at least. Of course, you don't have to start your history there. John Bolton's been around for decades in these circles. He's a coup plotter extraordinaire, and he probably looks up to what Nixon and Kissinger were both doing when they were in the White House and were destabilizing the world. So we get a second clip, and in this second clip, you have Jake finally circle back and decide that he is going to address this wild thing that John Bolton has just brought up in the conversation about Donald Trump and the January 6th committee hearings.
I do want to ask a follow-up. When we were talking about what is capable, what you need to do to be able to plan a coup, and you cited your expertise having planned coups.
I'm not going to get into the specifics, but
successful coups?
Well, I wrote about Venezuela in the book, and it turned out not to be successful. Not that we had all that much to do with it, but I saw what it took for an opposition to try and overturn an illegally elected president, and they failed. The notion that Donald Trump was half as competent as the Venezuelan opposition is laughable. But I think there's another...
I feel like there's other stuff you're not telling me, though.
I'm sure there is. I think there's another point here.
Okay, so he gets into the fact that he was involved in plotting a coup in Venezuela, and Jake Tapper barely approaches this with the seriousness that it should be owed. And in fact, he seems to be blushing that he's in the presence of somebody who might be a thug, and he doesn't really know what to do because, of course, this is somebody who has become a kind of regular guest on CNN. It's also the person that you're supposed to look to as like a voice of reason who had left the Trump administration and might represent a sane conservatism, but it's not. And I don't know that Jake Tapper really knows what to do in order to handle it. So he doesn't, and it's pitiful. And so when he's talking about Venezuela, though, he's very upset and will always hold a grudge against Donald Trump for not going along with him in his effort to pursue a coup in Venezuela. And there was obviously a cabal within the Trump administration that hoisted up Juan Guaido as the person who would lead Venezuela, and they wanted him to compete and take over the country and overthrow Nicolas Maduro after an election. And so the fact that Donald Trump didn't more enthusiastically back what John Bolton was doing is something that he wrote about in his book, The Room Where It Happened. Again, I think he's trying to be hip or something. That's obviously a Hamilton reference. We had the Star Wars reference earlier, but nice try, Grandpa. And then he talks about everything that he doesn't like that Donald Trump did in his book. And as it turns out, even like a think tank in DC that could be on board with meddling and kicking Nicolas Maduro out of power and would endorse some of the worst State Department statements that suggest that Venezuela isn't a free country and that Nicolas Maduro is not its rightful leader. They do a review that they publish of his book and conclude that essentially Donald Trump had a better grasp of what was going on in Venezuela than John Bolton. And it's a lie. It's a lie for him to sit there and say that that he was not participating in the coup. It's pretty a blatant lie. Uh, he was involved in coming up with sanctions. He's involved with discussing whether there should be military deployed there or not. He's assessing the ground and trying to figure out what the tools are that the U.S. government can bring to bear on Venezuela in order to destabilize it and have the Venezuelan poor rebel against their own government. He believes that there's bureaucratic foot dragging happening. He thinks that there's not enough agency-wide buy-in, including among career officials who know about Venezuela and Latin America. According to this think tank, the Brookings Institution, they did a review. He's repeating a fiasco. In his head, he's going through the motions of repeating the Bay of Pigs fiasco in Cuba, and it's the case that he's wondering why the Venezuelan military hasn't fragmented, why it's united in support of Maduro. He doesn't really know what he's doing. So I don't think it's true that you have to be smart in order to pursue a coup. You can be stupid. You can be John Bolton. You can be so boneheaded as John Bolton and so ideological in your commitment to pursuing U.S. empire that you press onward and support Juan Guaido as the leader of a country, thinking that there's any chance at all that he could ever be the leader of Venezuela, when like now you look at what's happening in his country and he's the laughing stock of his country. He can't go out to eat at a restaurant without being mobbed and tossed out and his shirt ripped because they blame him for what he did to his country, rightfully. And also, he's not really much of a leader. He's not somebody that even people in his party want to get behind anymore. He's a complete and total joke. And so is John Bolton. But he's given this air of legitimacy by CNN when they host him for these conversations. I think when you listen to what is said by John Bolton, it's I have a similar reaction, same reaction that I had to this clip.
Cadet. What's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
So lied, cheated, stealed, laughing. There's a room of sociopaths. They're clapping. Yeah, lying, cheating, stealing. Yay. Everybody's doing it. And then you have John Bolton now on CNN, and he is grinning about being a coup plotter. And I think he's basically now CNN's official senior coup analyst, the resident coup expert, someone that they can call on to assess coups. They have elections experts. They have somebody who can go to their big board. That's Steve Kornacki. He crunches the numbers. He looks at the data. He shows you the counties. I think there probably won't be very long. They'll get John Bolton and his wily mustache, a big, huge screen, maybe a hologram, whatever technology they want to trot out. And they can just have him working it with some clicker, and he can walk us through the different coups that are happening in the world and bring his knowledge. He's actually very proud about being involved in these coups. He's a proud boy of the coups. This is a ghastly clip. It's also a mask off clip. It's the kind of clip that tells you exactly where elites stand, and you're a fool if you don't act on it. You're a fool if you don't take it as truth. And I know that Jake Tapper was uncomfortable, and he's laughing inside uncomfortably because he didn't expect to feel like he was sitting next to a reptilian person. And yet that's the kind of smarminess that is John Bolton. And if he doesn't want to feel that ick, then maybe he should book or ensure that the producers of his show don't have John Bolton on as a regular guest. But we know he fits in. He fits in. He was arguing for a permanent military commitment in Afghanistan last year before the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan. And that was something that Jim Sciutto was on board with. There are others who share his ideas and support his coups, and they don't bat an eye about anything that John Bolton was involved in before the Trump years. And he's able to rewrite his history, launder his reputation by appearing on CNN, because that's how U.S. media works. All the war criminals that we have been subjected to and had to live with and tolerate in our lives, they now appear on CNN, Fox News, occasionally, sometimes on MSNBC. And they're the ones that we see and get our analysis of current events from, because they have never, ever been held accountable for their bloodlust, for their crimes, for what they've done and what they're willing to do in order to advance their power. So thank you for tuning into this video. And I'll just put up the Dissenter URL again. If you are not a subscriber, I encourage you to subscribe to thedissenter.org. Thank you, and I'll be back soon with another video.